welcome back to High Noon from 1952. As we hear the intro song playing, so this movie is based off of a magazine story. And these three cowboys are meeting up with each other to head somewhere. And directed by Fred Zinnemann, or Zinneman. So the three arrive at this town called Hadleyville, located in New Mexico, and the townspeople are concerned about these three outlaws as everyone runs back inside. And especially these guys who probably know these three outlaws. Wow, that's funny. The moment he saw the marshal's office, he just runs away. Meanwhile, we see this wedding happening as we see the protagonist himself, Marshal Will Kane, played by Gary Cooper, as he marries Amy Fowler here played by Grace Kelly. So with the outlaws continue to ride into town, this barber notices the three outlaws, and this is the third time we hear the name Frank Miller being mentioned. So the three have made it to the train office here about the train times, and we now know the names of the three outlaws, or two of them at least. One of them being Jack Colby, played by Lee Van Cleef, and Jim Pierce, played by Robert J. Wilk. So after seeing the three, the train ticket guy runs to Hadleyville, as Will is still marrying Amy, and they are married. And the ticket guy keeps running as these two townspeople notice it. Meanwhile, Will Kane is annoyed by all the people at his wedding. And the two will try their best to stay married, but the townspeople are impatient and comes in barging in the mayor of Hadleyville, played by Thomas Mitchell, and the townspeople just can't stop admiring Will's wedding.
But I got to be paid first.
So the mayor now wants Will's badge back since he is now retired from Marshal of Hadleyville since he's married. And this guy, Martin Howe here, who looks like he was the original Marshal of Hadleyville, played by Lon Chaney Jr., touches into the conversation. So Will gives up the badge and puts Amy in her place, and here comes the ticket guy with a telegram.
Pardon, Frank Miller.
What is it, Will?
Like the mobile application for today, same name, but a telegram used to be a piece of paper, like a message. But this time from Marshal Will Kane here. So I just looked at it for a second and instantly knew it was a danger. That's funny, and that's very good. So it's a pardon for Frank Miller, the antagonist of the movie. And the ticket guy here tells Will that Miller and his two guys, or three guys, are waiting for the train at noon, and the mayor wants the newlyweds to leave Hadleyville right away. And the townspeople will handle Miller and his guys.
That's funny.
And the two ride away as we see the real replacement for Will as Marshal of Hadleyville, Harvey Pell, played by Lloyd Bridges. Jeff Bridges' dad. Nepotism is pretty common in Hollywood. And his girlfriend, Helen Ramirez, played by Katie Jurado, and tells her he saw Will Kane riding off in a hurry. So she goes to tell this guy, Sam here, that Frank Miller is in town and he looks like the acting marshal and will go check out the three outlaws. And as these two ride off, Will stops here to tell Amy that he has to go back since he feels needed to handle Frank Miller himself. So Will turns back to Hadleyville, and now this. She practically made fun of her boyfriend here. That's sad. That's pretty sad. So like I said, Harvey Pell's the, acting marshal for tomorrow. But he's still new at it, even though he's still the deputy marshal for Will Kane. And this guy here tells the barber here that Kane is back so soon and will need more than 2 coffins. We're going to see a lot of dead bodies later. And Will's back getting ready as he tells Amy that Frank Miller he caught 5 years ago was supposed to be hanged, but now pardoned and on the loose. And she begs him to not do this since that's the new marshal's job, but he has to do it since he's never even seen or met his replacement as marshal. So she begs and even warns him that she will run away on a train to leave Hadleyville if he doesn't stop this. So she runs out and rides away, and Will says hi to this guy.
You shouldn't have come back, Will. Stupid. I figured I had to. I figured I had to stay.
And he's a judge that pardoned Frank Miller, played by Otto Kruger, and just packs up his things and tells Will he should have never came back. And even Will came the day Frank Miller was supposed to be hanged, and the very chair Frank Miller was sitting. And at the train station, as Amy gets a ticket to get out of here, and sees Frank Miller's 2 goons just waiting for Will Kane, and she just runs off. So meanwhile, Harvey and Helen are having breakfast, and Harvey is actually avoiding Will Kane since it's a personal matter, and if she were him, she would too also avoid Will Kane, and this gives Harvey an idea, and we'll be back soon, and Will Kane saying goodbye to the judge.
Why aren't you in church?
Why ain't you?
Look, will you do something?
And Will is still serious about going after Frank Miller and spots this kid here and sees that he isn't in church and is about to slap him. And Will tells him to round up Martin Howe, who we saw earlier, Sam Fuller, and Joe Henderson. And Joe Henderson, who's the mayor of Hadleyville that we saw. And especially Harvey Pell, and comes in from behind, and just like everyone else, he wants to do the job and tells Will Kane to run away already. And wants Will Kane here to listen if the new marshal wasn't to show up anytime soon. Will would gladly let Harvey Pell take over this job as the full-time marshal. But that's not going to happen. And Will says that's fine, and Harvey wonders why hasn't he ever been promoted to marshal of Hadleyville yet. Well, he is too young, Will's right. So but Harvey still wants to become the marshal, and he thinks Will doesn't want him to be promoted as he still thinks that him and Helen Ramirez are together. And Will responds he never cared for Helen, nor he doesn't care about Harvey and Helen being together at all. You're a what? But Will Kane doesn't have time since almost high noon, and even tests Harvey's ability to even make a decision on his own if he is serious of wanting to be a marshal. So it looks like Harvey Pell has officially quit being deputy marshal. Meanwhile, at the train station as Frank Miller and his guys are still waiting around, and back at Harvey's with Helen giggling.
I thought you'd grew up by now.
When are you going to grow up?
Two of the same growing up remarks, and Harvey telling Helen that Will didn't promote him since he told Will that he knows about him and Helen, and getting her all pissed off, and tells him to leave. And time is ticking here since it's almost noon, and comes in knocking Tom again from earlier to ask what happened to Harvey. But she dodges it, and she wants to talk to Mr. Weaver. And she wants to leave and asks if he could help Will Kane, and she says no. So next scene, Amy Kane is here at this hotel to ask if she can stay here and until the train comes. And the hotel manager instantly recognizes her and asks why she is leaving without Will, and is so excited to see the showdown between Will Kane and Frank Miller.
I wouldn't leave this town at noon for all the tea in China. No, sir, it's going to be quite a sight.
He does look pretty similar and speaks like Vincent Price, the horror movie actor, if you know who that is. So back at church, and here comes Sam signaling one of the church choir boys, who is probably Mr. Weaver, and walks out the back. And Will is still waiting for the danger to happen, and Herb walks in, who will take Harvey's place for now. Puts on Harvey's badge and is concerned that Will doesn't have any backup yet and will come back in 10 minutes. And Will writing up a be back in 5 minutes sign and runs off. And back at Helen's as Tom says Mr. Weaver is here and she wants to sell him her shop for $2,000, but he only has $1,000, and she agrees since she just wants to get out of Hadleyville. So back with Will Kane as he walks around and spots Amy again, thinking she's going to stay, but she thought the same of him wanting to leave Hadleyville with her, waiting for the train. But Will Kane is really here to see Helen Ramirez.
Think you can find it all right?
So after hearing that, he walks in and sees her, and the way he describes Frank Miller's presence back in Hadleyville looks like she had been included in a past Frank Miller memory, and she will run away off soon in these words.
Un año sin verte.
Sí, lo sé.
So Will Kane goes back out and looks at the hotel manager and walks out past his wife Amy, and now she asks the hotel manager this.
You don't like my husband, do you?
No.
Why?
One thing, this place was always busy when Frank Miller was around. I'm not the only one.
So that's so much clearer now, and we also learned the hotel manager doesn't like Will Kane since he killed the business of the hotels. Frank Miller's presence back then was much better for his business, or Helen Ramirez's business, and used to be busier, the hotel was. So Frank Miller and the two are still waiting around for noon, and Harvey Pell, going into the Ramirez saloon belonging to Helen Ramirez's ex-husband, tells the barkeeper he quit his job, and now comes in this guy, Ben Miller, played by Sheb Woolley, who was the third guy at the train station when Jack Colby and Pierce were asking the train guy for hours of the train to arrive. Now the barkeeper asks how Frank Miller's doing. Looks like he is Frank Miller's brother since they share the same last name. So out of anger, Will slaps the barkeeper, and he is desperate for deputies since Harvey quit. And no one here wants to be Will's deputy or deputies, and he just walks out the saloon and gets a little teary that no one is helping him, and spots the house over there and walks towards it. So Sam Fuller, played by Harry Morgan, hides himself away from Will Kane because he doesn't want to help, and tells Mildred Fuller here, played by Eve McVie, to lie for him to Will. And she lies to Will that Sam Fuller has gone to church, so he leaves, and this guy with the eye patch from the saloon wants to help Will Kane and wants a gun, and tells the iPad guy he'll call if he needs any help. As Harvey returns to the Ramirez Hotel, he walks up and sees Helen's leaving town, and Harvey thinks she's running away with Will. But she tells him this.
But he is a man. It takes more than big broad shoulders to make a man, Harvey. And you have a long way.
So the real reason why Helen's leaving is that Will Kane will be dead in half an hour. And if he's dead, Hadleyville is dead, and there's no one else who will be there to guard the town. That means no more marshals, ever. That means no marshal. And Harvey grabs Helen again and tells him she would only like to be held unless she wants to be, and slaps Harvey Pell. So the next scene, Will Kane is walking to the church and everyone turns around right away, and the preacher here is pissed off. Will didn't have his wedding here at the church, and all Will wants is help, and the preacher lets him talk to the churchgoers and that Frank Miller will be here soon at noon. And these guys were ready to go and see this churchgoer telling them, don't help Will Kane out since since this showdown is a personal matter between Will and Frank.
Let's be sure we know what this is all about.
And Mayor Henderson gets up and tells everyone to shut up and get the kids out of here. So half the movie's done. Frank Miller's three guys are still waiting for the train. And back to the church, still debating whether Miller is worth going after, since one side says it's a personal matter against Will Kane, and the other side says the politicians have released him and it's their fault. And their only solution is to have more deputies, and the mayor now points at some hands being raised and some good points have been contributed. And back to more nonsense, and others speaking, now the mayor asking the preacher Parson here what he thinks. And the mayor says that Will Kane is their best marshal and will be their best marshal Hadleyville has ever had. And it's the town's problem now that Frank Miller's back. After all that lecturing, the mayor proposes a solution that Will Kane should just leave right before Frank Miller comes. And Will, having a pissed off look on his face, he just leaves. And the kid's already making fun of Will Kane and walks to Martin Howe's home and asks him if the kid he sent came here, and says yes he did. And brings up the history between him and Martin, who got him the marshal job. And Martin tells Will this is not worth since he's lived his life of law and order, and he is the original marshal of Hadleyville, and says that knowing that a criminal, no matter how heinous the crime, will get released eventually. Yeah, that's pretty true. But Will wants Martin to come with them to the train depot, and Martin says no. So going back to the hotel, as Amy Kane asks the hotel manager for Helen Ramirez's room and goes upstairs to see her, and wants to speak to her what her relation is with Will Kane, and tells her to let him go. So Helen responds he hasn't spoken to Will for over a year, and she's leaving Hadleyville too, just like Amy here. And Helen criticizing Amy for leaving Will, and Amy bringing up both her brother and dad who got killed by guns, doesn't want the same for her newlywed husband, Will Kane. And her brother getting killed is how she became a Quaker, as mentioned by Will at the church earlier.
What kind of woman are you? How can you leave?
And Helen lets Amy stay here until the train comes, as Will still walks around looking for help. And meanwhile, at the Ramirez saloon, with the barkeeper liking Will for having guts to do all this himself, and thinking Harvey had the same guts, but he was wrong.
I can't pick my company when I drink in here. I ain't coming in here anymore.
And Harvey about to drink and sees Will walking towards here, and Will Kane going to the stable to get a horse, and Harvey is here to finally help him. And Will giving up as Harvey says what happened to doing it all by herself. So Harvey is put to sleep for now, and Helen was right. Helen was right. So meanwhile, Amy and Helen are having a conversation again, and Will walking to the barbershop wanting water and lays on the barber's chair and hears hammering, and it's of course the coffins being built that were mentioned earlier, and gets himself cleaned up and heads back to the marshal's office and sees Herb again, his only volunteer that agreed to help Will. And Will could immediately tell he wants to run away from all this, leaving him angry, and the kid who was asked to round up all three guys, Will asks for and wants to help out, and even lies about his age, and is just shoved out since he's just a kid.
That's right. Do you want out, Herb? Well,
and Will writing down a letter as all the townsfolk are waiting for the 12 p.m. train to stop by and are scared too. And now the train whistle blows into Hadleyville, and Will finishing up to write up his letter. And Will finishing up to write his letter and waking up Charlie in the cell here, played by Jack Elam. The reason why I recognize him is because he's in the Cannonball Run movie from the 1980s. Good stuff, check that out, Burt Reynolds. The two girls are riding out of Hadleyville, and this is very awkward for Will Kane. The 12 p.m. train has arrived, and now see Frank Miller himself stepping out, played by Ian McDonald. And even spots Helen Ramirez. So it's 4 against 1. And Amy getting off the train after hearing that first gunshot and runs out of the train. So there's about 5 minutes left of the movie as Will Kane is taking cover and on the run since one guy is already dead, who's Frank Miller's brother. What's his name? I forget his name. And Will kills Jack Colby as Frank Miller throws these now, which are fire cocktails, to burn down the barn, and lets the horses free and runs out to take cover, leaving Frank Miller and this guy Pierce here looking for him. And this is a shootout as Amy kills Pierce from behind. As Frank Miller shits himself that he's the only one left. Frank Miller gets a hold of Amy, and Will spots her with him and is ready to shoot. With only 1 minute left of the movie, so Will picks up Amy and hugs her, and here come out the townsfolk all happy, and Will doing the right thing here by throwing his badge on the ground since this job was shit and wasn't worth it and wants to get out of here already. And these guys took advantage of Will. And as Hans Gruber said in Die Hard from 1988, Gary Cooper walking out into the sun with Grace Kelly. And that's it, High Noon from 1952, great movie. There is a remake for this movie, which came out on television in the year 2000 starring Tom Skerritt of the same title, High Noon. Some pretty well-known cast, but check that out too, because I've never seen it. Some of you will find this movie boring, and that's it from me. See you next time in Rush Hour from 1998. Take care, see you soon, and watch away. Check out High Noon.